This entire situation with Bricks and Minifigs and Reckless Ben has evolved into something far more serious and far more troubling than just a simple corporate dispute over a consignment agreement that went wrong. What started as a simple story about a family's investment in Lego being essentially stolen has now become a case study in how corporations use litigation as a weapon to silence critics, and how the judicial system can be weaponized against journalists and investigators who simply try to expose wrongdoing. The fact that Reckless Ben is now under a gag order and potentially facing jail time if he releases his third investigative episode speaks volumes about the severity of the situation and about how far corporations are willing to go to control the narrative.
Episode 3 is finally finished after crazy all-nighters and basically destroying my health. But I can't post it or I will go to jail. And not only that, I will also immediately lose my lawsuit of $300,000, and the GoFundMe we made for Brian will go straight to this mystery company that I am no longer allowed to talk about. They sent court papers to my email, which I guess a judge approved for them that this was a valid form of service. And so now that I'm officially served, I cannot even mention this company or I will be in jail and everything. Normally I would be like, screw the big guy telling me what to do. I'm gonna do what's morally right. But in this situation, if I do that, then all my friends get screwed with this lawsuit and we lose all the GoFundMe money we raised, like immediately. So I am no longer allowed to even mention this mystery company. My personal opinion is that this is unfair because this order was put on me because this company was telling the court that I was making bomb threats. I was planning on murdering the manager and employees, which obviously I didn't do, and you can see that in the footage. The only problem is I was not given a chance to.
Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and check out my other videos. All right, let's get into this. The story at the heart of all of this is genuinely heartbreaking and genuinely straightforward. An elderly man named Ed Mansell and his son Brian Mansell had a collection of Star Wars Lego sets that they estimated to be worth approximately $200,000. This was not just a casual collection. This was an investment that the family had built over many years and that they intended to use to help fund their children's education and their grandchildren's future. They made the decision to consign this collection to a Bricks and Minifigs franchise location in Keyser, Oregon, because they believed that the franchise would properly manage their consignment and eventually return their Lego or pay them for what was sold. Subscribe, because what happened next is the type of situation that probably happens to families and small business owners every single day in corporate America, but rarely gets exposed because most people do not have a YouTuber investigating their case. In November of 2024, the franchise ownership of that particular Bricks and Minifigs location changed hands. The new franchise owners apparently decided that they were not going to honor the consignment agreement and were not going to return the Mansell family's Lego collection. Instead, the collection simply disappeared and the Mansell family was left with nothing. This is where YouTuber Reckless Ben comes into the picture. Ben began investigating the case and produced a series of investigative videos that exposed not just the initial consignment dispute, but also revealed that the corporate office of Bricks and Minifigs was aware of the situation and was potentially complicit in the decision to withhold the collection from the family. Ben's videos attracted millions of views and brought widespread attention to the case, which is exactly what corporations fear most. What happened next shows exactly how powerful corporations can be when they decide to use the legal system as a weapon. Bricks and Minifigs filed a RICO lawsuit against Reckless Ben Brian Mansell and other co-defendants. RICO is the Racketeering, Influence, and Corrupt Organizations Act, which is typically reserved for organized crime and serious criminal enterprises. The fact that Bricks and Minifigs decided to use RICO against a YouTuber who was simply investigating and exposing corporate wrongdoing shows the level of aggression that corporations are willing to employ to silence criticism. Subscribe, because what is even more troubling is that Reckless Ben has now been served with a gag order which prevents him from publicly discussing Bricks and Minifigs or the details of the case. According to Ben, if he releases his third investigative episode, he will face criminal charges and will go to jail. Additionally, releasing the video would cause him to immediately lose his lawsuit, which is seeking $300,000 in damages, and it would redirect the GoFundMe donations, which have exceeded $445,000 straight, to Bricks and Minifigs instead of to the Mansell family. This is an absolutely dystopian situation where a corporation has essentially used the threat of legal action and jail time to silence a journalist from reporting on their wrongdoing. Ben is not allowed to talk about the company. He is not allowed to discuss the evidence he has gathered. He is not allowed to release his completed investigative episode. He is essentially being silenced by legal threat and the threat of incarceration. What makes this even more disturbing is the apparent connection between Bricks and Minifigs and local law enforcement. According to Ben and other observers, there appears to be a connection between the franchise owners and the American Fork Police Department in Utah. Joshua Johnson, who is one of the franchise owners, is allegedly affiliated with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and several of the police officers involved in the case also have connections to the LDS Church. This has led to allegations that there is religious and corporate collusion between Bricks and Minifigs and the police department to cover up the scandal and to silence reckless Ben. Ben was arrested on March 10, 2026 on charges of stalking, targeted residential picketing, disorderly conduct, and criminal trespass. He was arrested again and had his home searched under a court-approved warrant. These arrests came after Ben was investigating the case and trying to get in contact with the franchise owners to document their statements and their responses. The police response appears to have been retaliatory in nature and appears to have been motivated by complaints from the franchise owners and Joshua Johnson personally, rather than by any legitimate law enforcement concern. Subscribe, because what we are witnessing here is a textbook example of corporate overreach and of how the legal system can be weaponized by powerful corporations against individuals who attempt to expose wrongdoing. Reckless Ben did not commit any crime. He did not steal anything. He did not harass anyone in the traditional sense. He simply investigated a corporate scandal and shared his findings with the public. For that, he has been arrested, sued for RICO violations, and slapped with a gag order that prevents him from continuing his investigative work. What happened with Patreon is actually heartening and shows that there are still platforms and companies willing to stand up to corporate bullying. Bricks and Minifigs filed a takedown request with Patreon demanding that Reckless Ben's account be removed and his funding be cut off. Patreon CEO Jack Conte responded by publicly refusing the takedown request and defending Reckless Ben's right to create content and receive support from his audience. Conte essentially said that Patreon's lawyers are better than Bricks and Minifigs' lawyers, and that Patreon will not be removing the account. This is a ballsy move by Patreon, and it shows that there's at least one major platform that is willing to stand up to corporate intimidation. However, not all platforms have taken the same stance. The GoFundMe that was created to help the Mansell family appears to have been removed or at least severely restricted, because according to the situation, Ben found the fundraiser page using the Wayback Machine but could not access it directly. This is concerning because it suggests that GoFundMe may have bowed to pressure from Bricks and Minifigs. What is absolutely insane from a business perspective is that Bricks and Minifigs chose to escalate this situation rather than simply paying the Mansell family their $200,000 and moving on. A $200,000 payment would have been a rounding error for a company that operates over 300 franchise locations across North America. Instead, Bricks and Minifigs chose to fight the family, chose to file lawsuits, chose to use the police as a weapon, and chose to try to silence the YouTuber investigating the case. In doing so, they have destroyed their brand reputation, they have drawn international attention to the scandal, and they have turned themselves into the villain in what could have been a simple settlement. Subscribe, because the irony is absolutely thick, because this is a perfect example of what people refer to as the Streisand effect, where attempting to suppress information actually amplifies it and makes it bigger. Bricks and Minifigs tried to silence Reckless Ben by suing him and slapping him with a gag order. What that actually did was make the story even bigger and made even more people aware of what happened. If Bricks and Minifigs had simply settled with the Mansell family and issued an apology, most people would have forgotten about this by now. Instead, the story has become a national scandal. The bigger story here that deserves investigation is the apparent connection between Bricks and Minifigs and local law enforcement in Utah. The way that the American Fork Police Department has treated Reckless Ben, the charges they have filed against him, and the timing of his arrest all suggest that there may be collusion between the police department and Bricks and Minifigs. This is not just about corporate wrongdoing anymore. This is potentially about law enforcement being weaponized to cover up corporate misconduct and to silence journalists and investigators. If there's legitimate evidence that the American Fork Police Department is colluding with Bricks and Minifigs, or if there's evidence that the LDS Church connection is being used to influence law enforcement decisions, then this requires investigation by the FBI or at minimum by internal affairs divisions within the police department itself. Police corruption based around a Lego collection might sound ridiculous, But the implications of what it suggests about the system are far more serious than the Lego itself. The fact that Reckless Ben is now silenced by a gag order means that the community has to continue talking about this story, because if they do not, who will? Bricks and Minifigs may be able to sue Reckless Ben, but they cannot sue every person on the internet who is talking about this scandal. They cannot suppress the entire community from discussing what happened. This is why the response from the community and from other content creators is so critical in situations like this. The timeline of how this situation escalated is important to understand. In October 2023, an unauthorized consignment agreement was made between Crystal Law Gorman, the former franchise owner, and Brian Mansell. This agreement was apparently never formally approved by Bricks and Minifigs corporate, though there is evidence that corporate was aware of it and honored it. In November 2023, Crystal posted a promotional announcement displaying the Mansell collection, and the event took place. Everything seemed to be going well. Then in November 2024, the franchise changed hands, and the new owners simply refused to honor the agreement. What makes this even more infuriating is that at one point, someone from Bricks and Minifigs corporate apparently verbally agreed to honor the consignment agreement. This is not a case where there's ambiguity or where both sides had legitimate claims. This is a case where the family made an investment. The company took the family's property and then refused to either return it or pay for it. Subscribe, because the CEO of Bricks and Minifigs, Ammon McNeff, has actually offered more recently to make things right and to compensate the Mansell family for their loss. However, this offer came only after the massive public pressure and only after the scandal had grown to international proportions. If McNeff had made this offer in week 1 or week 2 of the dispute, the entire situation could have been avoided. Instead, the company fought, the family fought, the YouTuber fought the platform, and in doing so, destroyed their own reputation. The charges that Bricks and Minifigs has leveled against Reckless Ben in the RICO suit include defamation, harassment, and extortion. However, none of these charges are legitimate. Ben did not defame Bricks and Minifigs. He exposed facts about what they did. He did not harass anyone. He investigated a corporate scandal. He did not attempt extortion. He called for the company to do the right thing. The fact that these charges have been filed and that a judge has apparently agreed to issue a gag order based on these charges is deeply troubling from a First Amendment perspective. What this situation demonstrates is that the legal system can be extremely expensive and extremely intimidating even when you're in the right. Reckless Ben appears to have done nothing wrong. He investigated corporate wrongdoing and reported his findings. For that, he has been arrested, sued, and gagged. The legal bills alone that Ben must be incurring are probably substantial, and this financial burden is likely part of the strategy to silence him. For the Mansell family, this situation has been a nightmare. They made a legitimate investment, they had their property taken. And when they tried to get justice through the system, they were faced with a massive corporation willing to spend whatever money was necessary to fight them in court and to silence anyone who tried to help them. This is not justice. This is not how the system is supposed to work. What this situation reveals about the American legal system is deeply concerning. The RICO statute, which was designed to combat organized crime and serious criminal enterprises, is being used against a YouTuber for the crime of exposing corporate wrongdoing. This is a perversion of the statute and a misuse of the judicial system. The fact that a judge signed off on a gag order preventing Reckless Ben from speaking about Bricks and Minifigs is a direct violation of First Amendment principles, even if it technically survived legal scrutiny. The right to speak about matters of public concern, including corporate wrongdoing, is one of the most fundamental rights guaranteed by the Constitution. When a corporation can use the court system to silence speech about their misconduct, that fundamentally undermines the ability of the public to hold powerful institutions accountable. This sets a dangerous precedent for other corporations to follow the same playbook whenever they face criticism or investigation. Subscribe, because what is also notable is that Reckless Ben is not a professional journalist in the traditional sense. He is an independent YouTuber who decided to investigate a story that captured his attention and that he believed deserved attention. If corporations can sue independent investigators and place gag orders on them to prevent them from speaking about corporate wrongdoing, then the entire concept of investigative journalism becomes impossible. Not everyone can afford expensive lawyers to fight massive RICO lawsuits. The GoFundMe raising over $445,000 has been crucial in helping the Mansell family deal with the financial burden of legal fees and lost income. However, the fact that the GoFundMe appears to have been removed or restricted is concerning and suggests that platforms may be more willing to cave to corporate pressure than Patreon was. If corporations can use pressure to remove fundraising campaigns for people who are suing them or criticizing them, then they effectively have the ability to financially strangle their opponents into submission. What is also worth considering is the cost-benefit analysis from Bricks and Minifigs' perspective. The company has now spent enormous amounts of money on legal fees. They have closed the franchise location. They have parted ways with the franchise owners of that location. They have attracted international negative attention and scrutiny. And they still have not resolved the core issue, which is that an elderly man lost $200,000 worth of Lego that his family invested. None of this had to happen if Bricks and Minifigs had simply done the right thing from the beginning. Subscribe, because the response from CEO Ammon McNeff to finally offer to make things right is too little too late. Yes, he is now offering to compensate the Mansell family and to make them whole. However, this offer only came after months of public pressure and after the scandal had become a national story. If McNeff had made this offer in week 1, the entire situation would have been avoided and the company's reputation would have remained intact. Instead, by waiting and fighting, the company has essentially destroyed its brand value and has turned itself into a cautionary tale about corporate malfeasance. The police involvement in this situation is perhaps the most disturbing element of the entire story. The American Fork Police Department has arrested Reckless Ben, has obtained a warrant to search his home, and has charged him with multiple misdemeanors based on complaints from Joshua Johnson and the franchise owners. This appears to be a coordinated effort between Bricks and Minifigs and law enforcement to silence the investigation and to protect the company from public scrutiny. If there's legitimate evidence of collusion between Bricks and Minifigs and the American Fork Police Department, this is a serious matter that demands investigation. The use of law enforcement as a tool to intimidate and silence critics is the opposite of justice. It is the type of behavior that occurs in authoritarian regimes, not in democratic societies with functioning legal systems. The role of religion in this situation is also worth examining. Multiple observers have noted that Joshua Johnson is affiliated with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and that several police officers involved in the case also have LDS connections. If the LDS church network is being used to influence law enforcement decisions or to provide support to one party in a civil dispute that is an inappropriate mixing of religious and governmental power, the police have a duty to serve all citizens equally regardless of their religious affiliations. Subscribe, because what the Mansell family needed was simple. They needed the company to honor a contract that they had entered into. They needed the company to either return their property or pay them for the value of that property. These are basic principles of contract law and of commerce. Instead, the family was met with corporate stonewalling, corporate litigation, and law enforcement harassment. This is not the rule of law. This is the rule of power. The broader lesson from this situation is that corporations have enormous power in the American legal system, and that this power can be wielded to suppress speech, to intimidate critics, and to silence journalists. Reckless Ben should be celebrated as someone who used his platform to expose corporate wrongdoing and to give voice to a family that had been wronged. Instead, he has been silenced by legal threats and imprisoned by a gag order. For anyone considering investigating corporate wrongdoing or attempting to expose corporate misconduct, this situation serves as a warning about the costs of doing so. The corporation will have vastly more resources than you. They will hire expensive lawyers. They will file expensive lawsuits. They will try to intimidate you. They may even use law enforcement as a weapon against you, and they may succeed in silencing you, at least temporarily. This is the reality of confronting corporate power in America. The fact that the GoFundMe exceeded $445,000 shows that there is genuine public support for the Mansell family and genuine public anger at Bricks and Minifigs. This community support is crucial because it provides financial resources to continue fighting the good fight despite the corporate legal onslaught. However, not every family and not every person who is wronged by corporate malfeasance will have access to millions of views on YouTube and to community support. Most will simply be crushed by the weight of corporate litigation. This is fundamentally broken. The system should not allow corporations to use the legal system as a weapon to suppress speech and to silence critics. There should be penalties for abuse of the legal system. There should be oversight of how law enforcement is being used in corporate disputes, and there should be protection for investigative journalists and YouTubers who are simply trying to expose wrongdoing. Peace.